Hello everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Gates channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Beyond the Gates suggests that killing Bill Hamilton may have just become a whole lot easier for Hayley Lawson, especially now that she has realized she may already possess the perfect deadly weapon. Bill, meanwhile, is more than willing to accept whatever Hayley is offering, completely unaware that her affection could ultimately cost him his life. What makes this situation so dangerous is that Bill is practically helping Hayley move her murder plan forward without realizing it, even while he remains under medical care at the hospital where he should, in theory, be protected from anything going wrong. But after Hayley and Bill accidentally triggered his heart monitor, something suddenly clicked in Hayley's mind, and that realization could completely change the way she intends to finish him. Hayley may no longer need poison because she has discovered that her own body could potentially become the weapon she needs. Bill is already eager to get intimate with his much younger wife, and if Hayley can push him into cardiac arrest through an intense bedroom encounter, she could potentially make his death look like a tragic medical event rather than murder. In Hayley's mind, she could simply claim that Bill insisted on being intimate despite his condition, allowing her to walk away with his life insurance money and eventually disappear to street parts without a murder charge hanging over her head. It would be the kind of clean, calculated ending she has been searching for. One that gives her the money she wants while leaving behind very little obvious evidence of foul play. The frightening part is that Bill seems completely incapable of recognizing the danger standing right in front of him. Right now, Bill remains trapped in his hospital bed, constantly bouncing between frustration over being stuck there and his usual flirtatious, reckless behavior toward Hayley. He complains about being confined to the hospital. Yet, at the same time, he is more than ready to turn that hospital room into a private playground with his wife. The medical staff has warned him repeatedly, but Bill has never been particularly good at accepting the word no, especially when he believes he knows what is best for himself. Hayley, meanwhile, is doing absolutely nothing to make the situation safer, and her sarcastic attitude toward nurses Shanice Johnson and Ashley only makes everything more suspicious. Every time they order her to stay out of Bill's bed, Hayley throws another cutting remark their way, almost as though she is daring them to stop her. The danger became impossible to ignore when Hayley's antics pushed Bill's heart monitor into the danger zone, sending alarms through the hospital and immediately drawing attention to what was happening inside his room. Yet, instead of recognizing the warning for what it was, Bill defended Hayley and turned his frustration toward the nurses. When Ashley Morgan rushed in, covering her eyes while reacting to the heart monitor alarm, Hayley tried to explain away the situation by suggesting that she had simply become so focused on Bill that love had distracted her from everything else. She might as well have claimed that love had made Bill deaf, dumb, and blind, because that is exactly what seems to be happening. Bill cannot see what Hayley is secretly planning, even when the warning signs are practically screaming in his face. Bill's anger only escalated when Ashley and Shanice tried to intervene, and he became furious when security eventually escorted Hayley out of the building. From the nurse's perspective, permanently banning Hayley from Bill's room may seem like the only logical next step, but Bill is unlikely to cooperate with that decision. Hayley, for her part, could easily pretend to calm down and play by the hospital's rules just long enough to regain access to him. The situation is even more dangerous because Bill is now frustrated in an entirely different way. Hayley has already gotten him excited, only for the nurses and the medical staff to force them to stop. That interruption may only make Bill more eager to continue their private games behind the nurses' backs, giving Hayley exactly the opportunity she needs. But there is one major obstacle standing between Hayley and her plan: the heart monitor. One alarm is enough to send an entire floor of medical staff rushing toward Bill's room, and Hayley cannot afford that kind of attention if she intends to push him beyond his physical limit. That is where Randy Parker could potentially become useful once again, especially if one of his questionable contacts knows how to manipulate or interfere with the equipment. Perhaps Hayley could find a way to make the monitor display a normal signal, or temporarily silence it so that nobody hears the warning when Bill's condition suddenly deteriorates. If she can eliminate that one obstacle, all she would need is privacy, opportunity, and enough time to push Bill into another cardiac crisis. And that is where everything could go horribly wrong for Hayley. Because Danny Dupree could walk into the room at exactly the worst possible moment. Imagine Danny pulling back the door and finding Hayley beneath the sheets with Bill, only to realize that Bill is suddenly in serious distress. Donnie could immediately yank Hayley away from him before Hayley succeeds in taking things too far, turning what Hayley intended to make look like an intimate moment into something deeply suspicious. Official Beyond the Gates spoilers have Hayley and Danny heading toward a confrontation by the end of the week, and Bill seems like the obvious subject behind their explosive clash. With Madison Montgomery returning as well, the situation becomes even more complicated because she will hear conflicting versions of what happened from Danny and Hayley, leaving her with a mystery that may be impossible to ignore. Donnie could very well accuse Hayley of deliberately trying to kill Bill with her own body, while Hayley would almost certainly insist that the entire situation was innocent. She could argue that she and Bill are deeply in love, that they were simply kissing and being affectionate, and that Danny is exaggerating everything because she is a jealous ex. It would be exactly the kind of excuse Hayley could use to turn suspicion back onto someone else. Meanwhile, the hospital restrictions are feeding directly into Bill's other major complaint. He is tired of being there and continues insisting that he would recover much faster in his own home. With the nurses watching Hayley like hawks, Bill may eventually decide that enough is enough and check himself out against medical advice, heading home with Hayley despite every warning from the doctors. For Hayley, that could be the best possible development. At home, Bill would no longer be surrounded by nurses, alarms, hospital staff, and constant medical supervision. And he would likely be thinking about exactly what he wants to do with his wife once they have privacy again. Hayley would be more than happy to encourage that thinking, because she may already be looking forward to putting Bill's pacemaker to the ultimate test and making certain he never walks away alive. If she can get him back inside their home where there are no monitors and no nurses watching every move, she will finally have the privacy she needs to attempt the most dangerous part of her plan. And the terrifying truth is that this would not even be the first time Hayley has tried to use intimacy as part of a deadly scheme. Before Bill suffered this latest collapse, Hayley had already gone to extreme lengths to make sure the poison she had given him moved through his system as quickly as possible. She had megadosed him with poison, encouraged him to work out, and then climbed on top of him in an effort to intensify the physical strain and force the poison through his body until he finally dropped dead. At the time, Hayley believed she had found a way to make the murder look like a natural medical catastrophe. Now, however, she may have discovered that the poison itself is no longer necessary. With Bill's heart already compromised and his pacemaker keeping him alive, one sufficiently intense encounter could potentially create the very medical emergency Hayley has been waiting for. The irony is almost unbearable because Bill himself has joked about testing his pacemaker through intimacy. He believes the device is supposed to regulate his heart, so from his perspective, there is no reason to be overly concerned about what he does. For Bill, it is another opportunity to joke about his own confidence and prove that he is still perfectly capable of doing whatever he wants. For Hayley, however, there is nothing funny about it. She is looking at the same situation and seeing an opportunity to turn Bill's arrogance into the weapon that destroys him, although even a carefully planned murder at home would still carry enormous risks. Someone could arrive unexpectedly, and that single interruption could expose everything Hayley has been trying to hide. Danny may claim that she has finished checking on Bill, but nobody should believe that she is truly going to stay away. If Bill leaves the hospital against his doctor's orders Especially after so many people have already begun questioning Hayley's behavior, there could be a constant stream of visitors arriving at the house to make sure Bill is actually safe. Danny would certainly not allow Hayley to keep her away, no matter how unwelcome her presence might be. Every unexpected visitor could therefore become another obstacle standing between Hayley and her murderous objective, buying Bill precious time without him even realizing how close he may be to death. Chelsea Hamilton and Naomi Hamilton Hawthorne could also stop by, and their visits would be incredibly important if Hayley is trying to isolate Bill. Any interruption that delays her plan, distracts her, or forces her to abandon an opportunity would give Bill another chance to survive. Beyond the Gates, spoilers suggest that Bill reaches a breaking point by the end of the week, and that may be the moment when he finally decides he has had enough of Garland Memorial and leaves the hospital. If that happens, Hayley could believe she has finally gotten exactly what she wants, only to discover that taking Bill home may actually surround her with even more suspicious eyes. The walls of the house may provide privacy, but they cannot guarantee that nobody will come knocking. Joey Armstrong could be one of those unexpected visitors. He has been spending time with Bill lately, and he previously promised that if something happened to Bill, he would look out for Danny and the girls. Because Joey already has reason to be suspicious of Hayley, he may notice things that Bill is too blinded by his attraction to see. Hayley's behavior could strike Joey as increasingly strange, especially if Bill suddenly leaves the hospital and his condition begins deteriorating again. And Joey may not simply confront Hayley. He could also corner Randy and demand answers about exactly what is happening behind the scenes. At the same time, Madison's return could create another major turning point in the story. Once she learns that her patient Bill suffered another collapse and required pacemaker surgery, she may become determined to understand exactly why his health keeps deteriorating. Madison could begin conducting much deeper and more wide-ranging tests, looking beyond the obvious explanation and searching for something that doctors may have overlooked. If she eventually detects traces of poison in Bill's system, the entire situation changes instantly. Suddenly, what appeared to be a mysterious medical crisis could become evidence of a deliberate attempt on Bill's life, and Hayley would find herself standing dangerously close to being exposed. If Madison realizes what is happening, she would probably be smart enough to speak with Bill privately rather than allowing Hayley anywhere near that conversation. Bill needs to hear the truth without Hayley having the opportunity to manipulate the discussion, interrupt Madison, or create another convincing explanation for what has been happening to him. And if Madison finally tells Bill that poison has been found in his system, the realization could hit him harder than any medical diagnosis. For the first time, Bill might begin to understand that Hayley does not love him for the man he is. She loves what his money can provide. Worse still, he may finally recognize that the woman sleeping beside him has been planning to make sure he never gets the chance to spend that money himself. That revelation could completely change the game, because Bill is not the kind of man who will quietly accept being fooled. His ego may be one of his greatest weaknesses, especially because he genuinely believes he is irresistible and that Hayley was drawn to him because of his charisma and magnetism. Discovering that she was actually attracted to his bank account would be devastating to him on a personal level, and his humiliation could make him far more dangerous than Hayley expects. Instead of confronting her immediately, Bill might decide to turn the tables and begin playing Hayley the same way she has been playing him. He could pretend that he still trusts her while secretly gathering information, allowing Hayley to believe her plan is working until she realizes far too late that the trap has been reversed. And there may be an even darker possibility waiting at the end of all this. Hayley might not even need to worry about Bill personally sending her to prison, because Bill could decide to let someone else handle the problem. Randy previously mentioned one particularly angry man whom Hayley had conned, a dangerous individual who apparently came close to hurting her in the past. That detail could become extremely important if Joey begins digging into Hayley's history and discovers just how many people she has deceived along the way. Joey could uncover her past as a con woman, identify one of her former victims, and then find a way to put Hayley directly back in that person's path. If that happens, Joey and Bill could keep their own hands clean while allowing Hayley's past to come crashing back down on her. Joey could expose the truth, Bill could survive long enough to make trouble another day, and Hayley could finally face the consequences of the dangerous game she has been playing. What makes this storyline so compelling is that Hayley believes she is always one step ahead, constantly manipulating Bill, exploiting his attraction to her, and turning every weakness into another opportunity. But Madison's investigation, Danny's suspicions, Joey's determination, and Bill's possible awakening could all converge at once, transforming Hayley from the hunter into the hunted. And if Bill finally realizes that the woman he trusted was never trying to save him at all, the next chapter of Beyond the Gates could become a dangerous game of deception, revenge, and survival where nobody is safe, and Hayley's perfect murder plan could collapse right in front of her. The more Hayley tries to control Bill's fate, the more the situation begins slipping beyond her control. And what once looked like a carefully calculated murder may soon become a dangerous web of suspicion closing in from every direction. Hayley believes the biggest challenge is finding the right moment to finish Bill, but the real threat may be that too many people are beginning to notice that something about her behavior simply does not add up. Danny is already watching her closely, Madison is returning with questions about Bill's mysterious medical problems, and Joey has his own reasons for keeping an eye on the situation. Even Bill, the man Hayley has manipulated so easily, could eventually become her greatest obstacle if he discovers the truth before she gets another chance to strike. The walls around Hayley may feel secure right now, but every new question brings her closer to a moment when she may have nowhere left to hide. For the moment, however, Bill remains completely convinced that Hayley is devoted to him, and that confidence could make him dangerously careless. He continues treating his relationship with Hayley as though their attraction is strong enough to overcome every warning from doctors and nurses, refusing to acknowledge that his body has already given him several frightening signals. The pacemaker may have saved his life, but Bill seems to view it almost as permission to return immediately to the lifestyle he wants, rather than as a warning that he has to slow down. Hayley can see that arrogance and weakness clearly, and she knows exactly how to exploit both. Every flirtatious moment between them therefore carries a second meaning, because while Bill sees romance, Hayley sees opportunity. But once Bill leaves the hospital, things may become much harder for Hayley than she expects. At home, she may finally have the privacy she has been craving. But privacy also means that if something goes wrong, there may be fewer medical professionals around to keep Bill alive. That could make her plan easier, but it could also make the consequences far more obvious if Bill suddenly collapses again. A second medical emergency shortly after leaving the hospital would immediately raise questions, especially after his previous collapse and pacemaker surgery. If doctors begin connecting the dots between Bill's symptoms and Hayley's presence, her story could start falling apart piece by piece. The very freedom she believes will give her the perfect opportunity might instead create the pattern that exposes her. And then there is Madison, whose return could quietly become the turning point nobody sees coming. Madison has already treated Bill and knows that his health problems are not behaving like a simple, ordinary cardiac issue. If she begins reviewing his medical history from the beginning, she could notice inconsistencies that everyone else overlooked while focusing on his heart. The discovery of poison would immediately transform her concern into suspicion, especially if the substance can be connected to the period when Hayley had unusually close access to him. Madison may not accuse Hayley without proof, but she is unlikely to ignore a pattern once she recognizes it. And if she starts asking Bill questions privately, Hayley could find herself facing a problem she cannot solve with charm alone. Donnie could become just as dangerous to Hayley, although for completely different reasons. Danny already has an emotional history with Bill, and despite claiming she is finished checking on him, she is unlikely to stay away when she believes his safety is at risk. If she sees Hayley behaving strangely around Bill again, especially after everything that has already happened at the hospital, her suspicions could become impossible to suppress. The confrontation between Danny and Hayley may therefore be more than a simple argument between two women who dislike each other. It could be the first moment when Danny openly challenges Hayley's version of events and refuses to accept the innocent wife explanation. Hayley, naturally, will probably fight back with everything she has. She can twist the situation, accuse Danny of jealousy, and insist that her relationship with Bill is genuine, hoping to make everyone question Danny's motives instead of examining her own. But the problem with manipulation is that it becomes harder to maintain when several people are independently reaching the same conclusion. Danny may have one piece of the puzzle, Madison another, and Joey another, while Hayley continues desperately trying to keep all those pieces from coming together. The more she explains, the more opportunities she creates for someone to catch a contradiction. And once that happens, Hayley may discover that the woman who always believed she could talk her way out of anything has finally run out of convincing excuses. Joey could be especially dangerous because he does not seem emotionally blinded by Hayley's charm. He has already made promises concerning Danny and the girls, and that responsibility could push him to investigate anything that threatens Bill's safety. If Joey notices that Bill's health problems repeatedly worsen whenever Hayley is around, he may begin asking questions that Hayley cannot easily answer. His attention could eventually shift toward Randy, particularly if he suspects that Randy has been helping Hayley obtain whatever she needs to manipulate Bill's medical condition. Randy may think he can stay on the edges of the situation, but once Joey starts pressing him, keeping quiet may become increasingly difficult. And if Joey uncovers Hayley's history as a con woman, the entire picture could become much darker. The story about the angry man she previously deceived could suddenly take on new significance, because it suggests Hayley has left behind other victims who may have their own reasons for wanting revenge. Joey might realize that Bill is not the first wealthy man Hayley has manipulated, and that her relationship with Bill may simply be another carefully constructed con. Instead of immediately turning her over to the authorities, Joey could consider a more calculated approach, especially if he believes one of Hayley's former victims would be willing to confront her. That possibility would leave Hayley facing consequences from a past she thought she had successfully buried. Bill's reaction could be even more unpredictable once he realizes the truth. For a man who has built so much of his identity around being powerful, desirable, and impossible to resist, discovering that Hayley was interested in his money rather than his charm could be a devastating blow. He may feel humiliated, betrayed, and furious all at once, and those emotions could push him into doing something completely unexpected. Rather than immediately expose Hayley, Bill might decide to play along, pretending that he still believes every word she says while quietly watching her every move. He could allow her to think she is still in control, only to slowly reverse the power dynamic until Hayley becomes the one trapped inside a game she no longer understands. That would create a fascinating shift in their relationship, because Hayley has spent so much time believing that Bill is the easiest person in the world to manipulate. She knows his vanity, his appetite for attention, and his weakness for physical attraction, and she has used all three against him. But if Bill becomes aware of the con, he could deliberately feed those same weaknesses to Hayley, making her believe that he remains completely under her spell. She might become increasingly confident that her murder plan is working, unaware that Bill is secretly collecting evidence and waiting for the perfect moment to expose her. The hunter could suddenly discover that her prey has been watching her all along. Meanwhile, the people around Bill could unknowingly create a protective wall that Hayley cannot penetrate. Chelsea and Naomi could continue visiting, Danny could refuse to stay away, Joey could check in, and Madison could keep investigating his health. Each person would represent another interruption, another question, and another pair of eyes that Hayley has to fool. She may be able to deceive one person, but deceiving everyone at the same time becomes much harder. A single careless remark could connect two suspicions that were previously separate, and suddenly the story Hayley has carefully constructed could begin unraveling.